So Jeppe is a project manager on vaccine and oncology integration in GSK. So thank you very much for joining, Jeppe. And now you can go ahead.
And you see my whole screen because I have this dashboard on my right.
Yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about what GSK is doing in response to the current pandemic. I just want to give you a short disclaimer before going into my presentation. I sense there's a lot of scientists on the call, and I'm not necessarily a super deep scientist myself. I'm here to talk about what GSK is doing as a company. So I'm very happy to take any science questions, and I will see if I can answer them afterwards, but don't expect me to go into the details that Richard did just early on. So introducing myself, my name is Jeppe. I'm working here in GSK Denmark in our vaccines department. I'm a project manager. I'm also part of the GSK Commercial Leaders Program, which is GSK's graduate program. Anyone who's interested in hearing more about the program or early career opportunities are very welcome to contact me. Just to introduce to GSK as a company. So GSK is, if not the biggest, one of the biggest vaccines manufacturers in the world. And we have manufacturing capabilities around the world. Last year, we supplied over 700 million doses of vaccines globally. And while vaccines is a very important part of our business, we're also big in pharmaceuticals, including respiratory drugs. And then we have a big consumer health care division as well. Just before going into the collaboration between Sanofi and GSK, which is one of the reasons why I'm invited today, I want to say that just a bit, that's just a part of the response that we're currently doing in order to face this pandemic. Obviously, and Heather was talking a little bit about this, about global supply. We are facing some of the same challenges in GSK, where countries and health systems are demanding a higher level of supply because they're building up safety stocks. So that's a big job actually to manage that. Because we know that there's a lot of patients around the world who are depending on a stable supply of our medicines. Also, we are working with a smaller biotech company to actually expedite the development of a treatment against COVID-19. And then lastly, we are working with 5 different vaccine developers, including Sanofi, to develop a vaccine against coronavirus. And that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about. So GSK and Sanofi is traditionally very fierce competitors, especially within vaccines. We are among the biggest vaccines manufacturers globally. So this is really an unprecedented collaboration. It's an extraordinary collaboration, but we also think this is an extraordinary situation that we're in. When we look at what we each bring to the table, Sanofi have developed the antigen, or a potential antigen that can be used in a vaccine against coronavirus. GSK brings to the table an adjuvant. We have a proven adjuvant system, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what that actually is. Richard also mentioned this a little bit earlier. Then, very importantly, we bring together large-scale manufacturing capabilities. A very important part of this equation about supplying a vaccine to the world is being able to scale production. And then, in addition, we also have an established global supply chain. So just a little bit about what is an adjuvant. And first of all, of course, importantly, we have the antigen, and this was also what Richard was talking a little bit about. This, of course, the molecule or the structure that we try to teach the immune system to recognize so that they can fight the pathogen. But then very often you have to add an adjuvant to that, because this is to modulate and increase the immune response to that antigen so that you will have a long protection from that pathogen. There are other benefits to an adjuvant. First of all, it's overcome that pure immunogenicity you might see from those small structures that you try to teach the immune system to recognize. It also, using the right adjuvant, can also increase the probability that you will have a longer duration of protection. We might also be able to protect special populations such as kids or people with a compromised immune system. And very importantly, the right adjuvant can spare antigen, which is extremely important in the current situation. I just want to remind everyone that we're in a global pandemic, of course, and we're a world population of around 7.8 billion people. And no vaccine manufacturer, not even the biggest ones, are able to produce this this volume. So having the opportunity to add an adjuvant that will, you know, give you more bang for the buck, so to say, so that you can decrease the amount of antigen needed to vaccinate more people is super critical. People who have who is familiar with vaccines and medicines development will have seen a slide similar to this. Of course, vaccine development starts with research and preclinical development, and this is currently where we're at with the vaccines that we're working on in the collaboration. We hope to be able to go into phase 1 within the next couple of months, which is the first, of course, human trials. We then hope to get regulatory approval by the second half of next year. And I just want everyone to appreciate how incredibly fast this is. Usually a vaccine will take several years, sometimes even a decade to develop. So this is really, really fast if we are fortunate and we'll be able to get regulatory approval on this project. The reason we can do this is because we're using already existing technologies, and we have the production facility to actually use that in the vaccine. But then a very important question comes up, is that everyone is talking about when can we have an approved vaccine, but that's actually just the first step, because having an approved vaccine doesn't need that there will be supply, because after that you will need to be able to source the raw materials. You will be able to, you need to be able to manufacture it, and we have vaccines in our portfolio in GSK that takes 2 years from the minute you start to manufacture it until it's ready to distribute. And then, of course, you need to distribute it across the world. And this takes, you know, this is a big task. And just going back to the previous slide, and that's actually the tricky thing about vaccine development in general, is that often you have to plan and scale your production facility already in phase 1 clinical trials. And that's actually what we're doing in GSK already now. We are looking at how can we allocate resources to start manufacturing this. And we don't even know at this point whether we will be successful. And then, of course, once you have a vaccine developed, hopefully, we don't know if our vaccine is going to be successful. There are, I think, last time I checked, something like 85 vaccine candidates in development worldwide. We think the answer is really that there will be several vaccines needed, not only ours, but several, because it might serve different population, and we also might need different technologies. But then GSK have a history of making sure that there is global access, that we don't not only look at the needs of high-income countries, but also look at, for example, low-income countries. And we have actually made the promise, not only that short-term profits that we get from making this adjuvant available to, for example, Sanofi, but also we will reinvest that in COVID research and pandemic preparedness. But we have also made the commitment that we will look and serve the needs of low and middle income countries. As many are aware, these are, you know, the coronavirus is really a big threat to, of course, highly developed countries, but the big catastrophe can really happen in countries that are poor and doesn't even have close to the health resources that we have here. And then we also have a history of making sure through a tiered pricing that we make the vaccine available globally, so that we will not, you know, use the situation to use excessive pricing and so on. And we have consistently ranked across the, you know, the top on the Access to Medicines Index, which is a nonprofit organization ranking the biggest pharmaceutical companies on a scale to see who are better to make sure there's global access to medicines. So just to really cap up really quickly, GSK is working with Sanofi. We are making our adjuvant technology available so that we can vaccinate more people with less antigen. We hope that we will be able to have a vaccine ready by the second half of this year. And of course, scalability is a big part of the equation here. This is why we're working with Sanofi. And then thirdly and finally, we have made the commitment to really focus on the accessibility on this vaccine. And I'm very happy to take your questions. Also, if you have questions about the graduate program in GSK, I'm also very happy to take any questions there.
Thank you very much, Jeppe. And same as I said before, I hope you manage to succeed quickly in finding a vaccine. Of course, to treat as many people as possible. So we have quite some questions. There's one from Srika Didara. Sorry for my pronunciation. She's surprised about the collaboration with Sanofi. So she's asking, why do you say that it's unusual? This collaboration is unusual. Isn't it the collaboration on two projects between two pharma companies really so rare?
So it's a good question. So going back to why GSK working with Sanofi, well, we're working with Sanofi, we're also working with a number of other companies and public entities. It's really unprecedented collaboration because in other times we are very fierce competitors. We're competing for some of the same patients in other disease areas, and actually in vaccines we have many of the same vaccines in our portfolio. So it's unprecedented that two companies that otherwise compete very fiercely actually go together. And I think this just speaks volume to the very serious situation that we're in.
Exactly. So Diego Soto Cabrera is also asking about the price. So given the global needs, what would be the strategy? How would you price it? And of course, this is I think it's a really interesting, difficult question.
It's a very interesting question, and actually,
sorry, Diego also had another question. So taking into the well, first ask that one first, and then we can take the next one. Yeah.
Okay, it's a very interesting question, and I also think pricing in this industry is a very interesting topic. So our approach in GSK generally, I cannot say anything specific. We don't have a finished vaccine yet, but generally what we do is that we look at different countries across the globe, and we have tiers of countries. So we look at how wealthy are these countries, and what is the what is the proportion of poor people living beyond. There is a certain number of things that we look at there, and then we look at different price corridors for these countries, so that typically in the lowest income countries we often offer the vaccine at very close to production cost, and in some circumstances we even donate that vaccine or medicine for that sake.
Okay, so I'm sure that answered the question. There's another question from James Alinev. Do you know if, or do you know where the human clinical trial will take place, and with which kind of population will you be looking at?
Great question. I don't know specifically which sites are going to be used in the first phase. As people aware of pharmaceutical development, this is a very, phase 1 is a very limited number of people, usually lower than 100 individuals. So it would probably be one site, but I don't know exactly.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. We have another question. Taking into consideration that there are a few vaccines against COVID-19 already in phase 1, how is this strategy from Sanofi and GSK going to compete or collaborate? I don't know how to put it. Going to be better with the others?
Interesting question. So again, the vaccines in development, the ones that are in the latest development phase are in phase 1, which is still a very early phase. So which one will be better, I think we will probably look at a picture when we're 1 year or a year and a half from now, where you will begin to see a contour that some vaccines are probably good for some populations, some vaccines are going to be good for other populations. So that's very difficult to say. I actually have a list here. If I go back, you can see here, I pulled this list a week ago, so the number might be a little bit bigger now. Things are happening at very fast speed at the moment, but you just see that there is a number of different technologies used, and those technologies will probably work in different ways, and because of that, they might actually be very beneficial to have in the market at the same time.
Yeah, okay. So you are really targeting different. Yeah. So first, we will take this as last question, and I don't want to go really far beyond the schedule plan. So there's a last question from Frost asking, assuming that there's a second wave of infection, will it affect sourcing and vaccine production?
So if there's a second wave, so I think it depends a little bit. So if we don't know yet whether a second wave, how that will what that will mean for the actual virus, whether it will mutate so much that any vaccines development or some of the vaccines development will not be effective, that we don't know. Whether it will have an impact in terms of, you know, manufacturing and being able to carry out clinical studies, maybe. Of course, we're taking as companies very big precautions to make sure that our workforce is healthy, to make sure that we can continue producing not only this vaccine or developing this vaccine, but also making sure that our products that are already on the market today are in steady supply.
Great. So yeah, as I said at the beginning, I hope you, you all succeed and find a vaccine quickly for everyone. And with this, I would like to thank you, Jeppe, again for joining. I will give you a big hand just by myself.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, all the attendees for joining. We hope to see as many as you possible, but in person in the next event that hopefully will happen soon. If you want to hear more about signups, our recruitment process, and the summer school, and all our next events, please stay tuned to our social media and our website. Stay safe and bye-bye. Thanks for joining.